I'm a physician at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. I take care of patients with CLL and B-cell lymphoma, and also run a research lab where I focus on research in this area, particularly underlying sort of the genomics and determinants of the process of transformation. So we were invited to write on this topic, given our sort of mutual areas of expertise in this area, both sort of from understanding scientific biology as well as clinical management and clinical trials in the case of Dr. Thompson, by two of our colleagues in the field who are putting together this review series on different aspects of CLL. So I'd encourage you to also check out some of the other articles, because I think there's some beautifully written articles on other areas of clinical challenge in disease biology and genomics. So I think a lot has actually changed in this area in the past couple of years, which I think makes it an exciting thing to write about because of all the new developments. Many of these developments are on the edge of advanced sort of scientific or biological understanding of transformation. So if we rewind the clock about 5 years, we actually knew very little about sort of what determined that change from CLL to Richter's transformation. So to take a step back, when CLL sort of becomes an aggressive lymphoma, we call that process a transformation. It's a relatively rare overall event, but it does impact a fraction of patients with CLL at some point during their disease history. And until recently, we were limited because of sort of lack of paired samples or lack of tools that allowed us to look at sort of very small cell populations or sort of separate out different admixtures of cell populations computationally to really figure out what was driving that process. What are the different molecular switches or different changes that cause that process to happen? And so among some of the different things that have been found is we do know that there's a lot of difference in genetics that happens. So we know that as cancer goes on for time, we can see what we call genetic evolution of the cancer cells themselves, meaning they acquire additional changes that make them further differentiated from that of normal cells. And so in the case of CLL becoming Richter's transformation, we now know that a lot of these changes happen in these same recurrent pathways. And this provides us insight into understanding what are the different processes that sort of allow a cell that is a sort of small, slow-growing cancer cell like CLL to sort of become a much more aggressive lymphoma and behave very different sort of clinically and biologically. In parallel to sort of understanding biology and gaining this new foundation of sort of what are these sort of molecular drivers, both genetic and non-genetic, that sort of contribute to this process. There's also been a lot of work in terms of clinical investigation. So if you look at the number of clinical trials that are going on in this space now, even compared to, again, 5 years before, there's been a lot of really exciting innovation. I think part of this is because some of our therapies for B-cell lymphomas in general have improved. And this is now sort of many of these different types of therapies are being investigated in the area of Richter's transformation. So I think it is very likely that how we approach or treat Richter's transformation in the future may change as a result of a lot of the clinical trials that are going on now. And I think that's a very exciting thing. Traditionally, our patients with Richter's transformation have not done as well when we use the sort of traditional chemotherapy-based regimens that we use for other similar aggressive lymphomas, like diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And that is probably because it is a different disease biologically from diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, as many of these studies have now shown. But I think there's a lot of emerging hope, and we're seeing some exciting signals in some of these clinical trials that some of these new immune-based therapy approaches may be effective where sort of chemotherapy has not. And so I think trying to figure out what are the right immune strategies as well as what are the right combinations is going to be really critical moving forward. And so we spent a lot of time in the review trying to summarize many of the different insights into some of these trials, and also mention some of the exciting trials that are going on now that we look forward to getting data from in the near future.